This terrifying experience happened to me a couple of days ago. Keep in mind, I have never experienced something like this before in my life. Although I have heard horrifying experiences of people dealing with sleep paralysis, I never thought it would actually happen to me. This is my experience. It all started on a Friday night. I was going through the cleaning procedures at my regular job. It was a slow night. Literally nobody was in the store. I was so bored, constantly staring at my watch, waiting for the minutes to pass. After about 20 minutes, my boss finally closed down the store for the night. At this point, it was 10 p.m. I usually work the afternoon shift from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. Normally, I get pretty tired, and today was one of those days where I was completely beat. I just wanted to get home and get some sleep. Anyways, after clocking out, I drove the 5-minute drive to my house, and I quickly ate some leftover pizza from the other day. After, I took a quick shower and got in bed ready to sleep. Before I could fall asleep, I couldn't help but think about my horrible week that I went through. I usually overthink a lot, and I believe the sleep paralysis occurred because of my overthinking. Before I knew it, I fell asleep. When I woke up, I couldn't move. It's like my body was stuck to the mattress. I could feel the sweat on my forehead. I looked around the room, and it was pitch black. For some reason, the door to my room was open, but I know I normally close that door every single night. I knew I must be experiencing some form of sleep paralysis, so I prepared for whatever was to come, or so I thought. As I looked outside my room into the hallway, I could see a figure standing on the steps to the second floor. From my room, you could see the spiral staircase in the hallway. The figure was just standing there. Only I didn't know if he was staring at me, since his face was all black. Almost as if I was in a horror movie, the figure turned and I could see its face. It was a creepy ghost-like black figure with glaring black eyes and a blue face staring directly at me. That's not even the worst part. The figure started to run up the stairs and then back down. It was literally running up and down the stairs. The hairs on my arms started to stand up, although I couldn't move my arms. I was getting goosebumps from that experience. I began to pray in hopes that the figure would disappear, but it only got worse. The figure stopped running and began to slowly walk towards the door of my room. Once he was in the doorway, it just stood there and stared at me, directly into my eyes and soul. It was terrifying on so many levels. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. I wanted to move, but I couldn't. As the seconds slowly faded into minutes, the figure started to disappear, and I regained control of my body. I quickly got out of bed and ran over to the stairs to make sure whatever thing was just there disappeared. Luckily, everything was back to normal, but I never want to experience something like that again. I just experienced sleep paralysis. This took place a couple of years ago during a rough time in my life. On this particular night, I had just returned from work, and I was feeling extra tired. I decided the best thing to do was go straight to sleep. It only took a couple of minutes before I was able to fall asleep. As my eyes started to close and mine started to drift away, I fell asleep. I woke up. For some reason, I was outside my house and it was snowing. In fact, there was a blizzard taking place outside, as it was extremely cold. I didn't know how I got outside or why I was here, but for some reason I started running. I kid you not, I was running at full speed in the snow. At some point I remember tripping and falling face first straight into the snow. It was extremely cold. I sat there feeling numb and unable to move any part of my body. I could feel the cold snow. I knew I must be in some sort of dream or nightmare, so I decided to try and wake up as it was starting to feel uncomfortably cold in the snow. Luckily, it worked. I opened my eyes to the darkness of my room. Instantly, I felt extremely thirsty, so I tried to reach over to the water bottle next to my bed. But I couldn't move. It's like my feet, arms, and everything was glued to my bed. That's when I started to feel the numbness, the same feeling that I had during my nightmare in the snow. The panic started to set in as I began to realize that the nightmare was not over. It was just beginning. I tried to speak or yell to see if anyone can hear me, but I couldn't. I wasn't able to move my lips. I began feeling really scared. I remember of all the sleep paralysis stories I read on the internet and how people experience their worst nightmares. I knew at some point that must be some demon or shadow thing that appears out of nowhere. Suddenly, my vision got really blurry. I felt like I was going to die as I was barely able to see anything. I started to feel even more numb than before. It felt as if I was flying in a pitch dark room with weight pulling me down. It was extremely terrifying. As fast as everything happened, it went away. The numbness began to subside and the blurry vision started to clear. I began to calm down, realizing that the sleep paralysis was slowly going away. A couple of seconds later, everything disappeared. I was back in my room, able to move and talk. This was definitely one of the scariest things of my life, although I was lucky that I didn't see any horrific demons or shadow figures during that experience. The next morning, I looked back on everything that happened to try and figure out how the nightmare connected to my sleep paralysis. I think this might have happened because I started sleeping and was still fully conscious. Because of that, whenever I woke up, my body had that one numbing chemical activated, so I couldn't move until eventually the effect went away. That's because my body stopped realizing it. That's the best explanation that I could think of. Since that experience, I've developed pretty regular sleep paralysis almost every single month. Sometimes I would even get sleep paralysis up to 3 times a night. Lately, I have started to experience it less and have moved on from that horrific event. I'll update if anything else happens. I've had sleep paralysis before, but nothing like this. This all started on a random day. I was around 19 years old during the time of this experience. Outside was a great day, so I hung out with my friends for pretty much the entire rest of the day. We did a lot of crazy shit, such as climbing trees, exploring woods, and dumb teenager stuff. It was an amazing day. As it was getting dark, my friend thought it was a good idea to go into the woods at night and see if we could use the Ouija board and contact some spirits or something. Clearly it was all jokes, as none of us believed in the paranormal. Either way, we thought it was a good idea, so we began walking down a dark path in the woods. We brought some flashlights, which really helped us navigate. Once we arrived at the hangout spot in the woods, we started playing the Ouija board. Obviously nothing happened, so we packed up our stuff and left the woods. By this time, it was getting kinda late, so we all decided to go home and get some sleep. I arrived home around 11:30 p.m. and was tired. Usually I stay awake pretty late, but today I decided to sleep earlier. From the minute my eyes opened, I knew something was not right. I wanted to turn my head to look at the clock and the time, but my head wouldn't turn. My face was stuck staring at the ceiling of the room. I had sleep paralysis before, so I knew this would eventually go away, so I just sat there waiting. The crazy thing was, I was hearing these strange sounds. It almost sounded like guitar strings, but creepy guitar strings. It was like someone was playing an old broken guitar. It kinda sounded eerie. I was beginning to get scared, as it sounded more and more creepy, and I couldn't move. I wasn't able to see what was making the sounds. The more I listened, the more I began to think that the sounds were coming from behind my head, at the head of the bed. This meant that I couldn't see the origin of the sounds. Now, in between the creepy sounds, I began to hear some sort of shuffling sound, as if someone or something was moving. What are you? Where is the sound coming from? I remember asking that in my mind. Instantly, as soon as I began to ask those questions in my thoughts, I got an answer. This was one of the scariest things that happened in my entire life. I'm right here. I heard a terrifying whisper coming from behind my head. I was right. I knew there must be something there making that sound. That's when the something revealed itself. The head of a strange shadow figure appeared exactly over my head, staring directly at me. I began to scream, but nothing came out. My mouth was shut. I wanted to move and run, but I couldn't. Then, suddenly all went black. I woke up and realized I could move my body. I was so happy I jumped out of bed and ran downstairs. Realizing it was still the middle of the night around 4 a.m. scared me. I knew I must have passed out because I was so terrified, and that eventually led me to waking up. For the rest of the night, I was scared to sleep, so I stayed up. Nothing like this has ever happened to me again.